Happy Sabbath, children of God. I am more than excited. I am blessed to be here today. Um, I want to thank Pastor Rob and Sister Lady May for the prayer, the much needed prayer. I need to calm my nerves down. I will not lie. I finished working on my sermon last night, and it's been a trip for me. So now I know what pastors go through. It's not easy at all. I don't know how our pastors do this, but I don't think I'll be a pastor. I will not do this for a job. Anyways, so this is Family Day Sabbath. So we had, very exciting plans before COVID-19 happened, but unfortunately, those were not able to materialize. But here we are, and we thought, I and the pastors thought that, we can put something together for the families, because again, I want to believe we went to bed in a different world, and we woke up the next morning and it was a completely different world. And so it is stressful. It's very different for every family. But one thing I know is that every family is doing their best. You are doing really well, because, I'm hearing of the word new normal, but every day is changing. Like, our normal today is not our normal tomorrow. So I've resolved, me and my family, to take a day as it comes, to just be in the here and now. And I'm calling upon you, whoever is watching, that you enjoy the moment. Just look around, look within you, look around the people that you have, and just enjoy their company and count your blessings. So, like I said, today's Family Day Sabbath, and the topic of my sermon is communicating God's way. Now, if there is a time when we needed to remind ourselves, I'm certainly not preaching, I'm not a preacher like I said, but I'm just sharing knowledge. I'm just sharing my experiences, both professionally and personally, and I hope that, you can pick one thing or two that, can keep you going. So we're gonna explore how we can communicate God's way. Again, like I said, I think this is a time where, good communication skills are really much needed, because personally I work as a therapist, a counselor, and I do work with couples and individuals. And some of the presenting issues for most of my clients are, we don't have time. Before COVID-19, we do not have time to, connect with our family members. It's busy left, right, and center, and so it's really hard to find time to connect, with our loved ones. And now COVID-19 happens, and all of a sudden we have so much time on us. And, just when you think that, you're going to have a good time, you're going to enjoy each other's company, and then all of a sudden it feels like it's too much. So I thought that if we are going to continue to build good relationships, if we are going to continue to enjoy each other's company in these unprecedented times, I think it's wise to remind ourselves on how to communicate effectively with the people that we deeply care about. So one of the reasons, or another reason why I thought about this topic, communicating God's way, is again, okay, here we go. So we are facing unprecedented times. So I read a survey on the internet that that stated that 18% of the couples that had taken the survey reported satisfaction in communication with their partners. So only 18%, and there were so many. I don't remember exactly how many people had taken the survey. So if it was only 18% that had reported satisfaction, that means 82% did not report great communication skills with their partners. So again, this is in April of 2020. after COVID-19 had happened. So again, because there is so much stress, there is a lot happening, and it's happening so fast, it is hard. It is hard for families. So I thought, again, let's explore, how we can communicate effectively. So many years ago, Emperor Frederick II conducted an experiment, and he wanted to find out man's original language. So he reasoned to himself and thought, if I take little babies, infants, and secluded them and gave them a caregiver that did not talk to them, these kids, these infants will come up with a language that is original to them. So he wanted to prove if there is a language that is, really original without having to be taught a certain language. Now, unfortunately, months in, the infants actually had to die because, one, they did not speak. All they did was, do sign language, and so he was not successful at that. Now, this illustration points out something that is really obvious. God created us for connection. When God created us, He longed and He hoped that we can connect. And I don't see how we can connect without necessarily talking to each other, without communicating, be it verbally or non-verbally. One way or another, we're going to have to communicate with each other. Again, many of my clients that I work with come in, and some of them just want to talk. Because normally when they come in, I work with them to set a goal. What are we working towards? What are you struggling with? And some of them are like, you know what? I just needed a safe space to rant. I just needed somebody who is not going to judge me and just talk to them. So again, most of the issues that families and individuals are experiencing could be stemming from not being able to feel safe enough to explore what it is that they are feeling or thinking. Okay. So what is communication? So I just wrote a few pointers here. So communication is sending and receiving information. So that's one way of defining communication. Communication also involves effective talking and active listening. So it's not just listening, because I know, I've heard so many, experts talk about active listening, which is really great. But I think another very important part of communication that is barely addressed is, being able to effectively talk or communicate whatever you have to communicate. Expression of feelings, thoughts, and needs. That is another important item when it comes to communication. Verbal and non-verbal communication. So communication is not only limited to talking, like I'm talking to you guys, to the congregation, but it also could involve not talking at all. I'm quiet, I'm maybe rolling my eyes, or I'm not even maintaining eye contact with you. I am communicating something, even though I'm not talking to you. Okay. Okay, so what are some of the unhealth? So we have unhealth communication patterns, but before we explore those, why? Why do we experience these unhealthy communication patterns? So one of the root cause of our unhealthy communication patterns are learned behaviors that mainly stem from our childhood experiences. We all grew up in an environment, or for kids that are still growing up, they have families, they have relatives, they have a community that is surrounding them. Now, the way your parents or your caregivers or your teachers talked to you, or handled themselves when they were communicating to you, those you carry on. So research has really shown that our childhood experiences does actually influence our adulthood experiences. So if you grew up in a home where there was lots of yelling, or there was a lot of passive-aggressive behavior, or, name it, somehow you end up, emulating these behaviors from a very subconscious level. You don't even know you're doing these things because they are so part of you. So that's one of that's where one of our behaviors stem from. Another unhealthy patterns that we are going to explore is the Four Horsemen. So, and I'll explain what I mean. Now, one of the my favorite researchers, he's called John Gottman. I don't know if any of you relate with him. So John Gottman is a renowned researcher who has done a lot of research. He has worked with couples, he has worked with families to really try and understand the science and the art of healthy relationships. And so some of the things that he has concluded, or some of his conclusions, are the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse, he calls them. And yes, so there's four guys, he calls them the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse. I mean, if you are a Bible student, you know somewhere in Revelation, there's four horsemen that, you know, speak about the end of the world. But in this case, he's talking about the fact that if these four things exist in any type of relationship, this relationship may end up dissolving or at least may be extremely dysfunctional. So one of them is criticism. Okay, so what is criticism? Okay, some of the characteristics of criticism are basically attacking one's character rather than behavior. You know how sometimes, you know, you're addressing somebody, you're talking to somebody, but instead of really trying to focus on what they've done or what they've not done, you really attack them as a person or attack their personality. People that like to criticize normally like to use words such as never, always. Like maybe you could speak to your partner or your friend or your family member or your son, daughter. You never like to clean your bedroom, for example. So you put like almost like an ending, like a forever type of situation that you'll never get out of this. Another characteristic of criticism is the person that likes to criticize normally is almost like sending a message of, I'm not perfect, but I'm not that bad. So like that's subconsciously, that's the message you're communicating to the person that you are communicating to. I'll give you an analogy of a soccer match. My husband likes to watch soccer a lot, and I've learned so much about soccer because of him. Now, one thing I know about playing soccer is that even though there's two teams that are trying to, you know, play soccer and really working so hard to win the game, but they try to pass the ball and keep the ball within the playground. And so one person kicks the ball to another and the other and the other. But the whole point, so the ball is not actually the issue, but it's the players. So they are working within themselves to, they're not so focused onto the ball, even though they are, you know, kicking the ball, but they are really trying to figure out, okay, where is my next player that I can pass the ball to. So likewise, when we are communicating to the people that we care about, it's not so much the issue that we are trying to nail down. So it's not so much the person, but rather the issue that we're trying to address. What is the remedy, or rather the antidote of this? Probably the question would be, how can I communicate to my loved one, to my partner, to my child, my friend, without necessarily pointing a finger? Now, one thing we really have to keep in mind is that human beings naturally have what we call blame detectors. So every time I sense any sort of blame, subtle, even if it's very subtle, my blame detectors will go off. So you really want to try your best to you can complain. Complaining is okay, ranting is okay, but try to do that without pointing a finger, without blaming that person. Let's see what scripture says about that. Proverbs 15, 14. Proverbs 15:14. Proverbs, can I have it? Oh, I got it here, okay. So Proverbs 15:14 reads, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. So again, if you want to avoid criticism, you want to seek understanding. You really want to understand your partner's, your child's perspective before you go off blaming them. The next horseman is contempt. Okay, contempt. Okay, so what is contempt? Really, contempt is a sense of superiority. And this could come off in so many ways. It could be, intellectually, you could come off to your partner, to your friends, as if, I know better than you. I am more educated than you are, right? I'm okay without you, especially for, romantic couples and, romantic partners. Sometimes it can get to a point where you feel like, what, I can do without my husband, I can do without my wife. Now, Gottman defines or stipulates or says that contempt is like pouring sulfuric acid on a relationship. It's that bad, really. When you come off as somebody who is really contemptuous, it's very destroying, it's very demeaning and very disrespectful towards the people that you really care about. Now, how does this come off? It could be verbal or non-verbal. So verbal could be like name calling, really name calling, yelling at your partner. Nobody deserves to be yelled at. Again, like I said, some of us learn how to yell. Our parents never sat us down and told us how to yell, but we watched them as we grew up. So sometimes we automatically yell when we are frustrated, or we hope that that person we are communicating to will hear us even better. But unfortunately, the higher you go, they shut down. So nobody deserves to be yelled at, even the little ones. Non-verbals could be eye rolling. If you're talking to somebody and they're all of a sudden rolling their eyes, they are not, again, if they are maybe not rolling their eyes, they are not maintaining eye contact with you. Those are some of the non-verbals. What is the remedy, or what is the antidote to this? Now, contemptuousness does not happen overnight. It builds up over time. And so the remedy would be to really build a culture of appreciating and affirming each other. Even when you know that your husband or your sister or your child is good at, taking out the garbage or cleaning the house or, doing laundry, it doesn't hurt to actually say it out loudly and say, what, I appreciate your meals. I appreciate when you fold the laundry. Because that's one way of actually reinforcing positive behavior. The Bible, so let's see what the Bible tells us about that. In Romans, so Romans 14, turn your Bibles to Romans 14. Okay, let me quickly find it. Romans 14, verse 10. Okay, I can't find it right now, just to redeem time. So we're going to do Romans 14, verse 10. You can read it at your own time, and Matthew 5:22. Let's just quickly move on to the third horseman, which is defensiveness. So defensiveness. Okay, so most of us are defensive. At one point, have been defensive or are still defensive at different points in our life. Now, people that really struggle with being defensive, they almost have an underlying need of wanting to be right all the time. They like to win the battle, really. That's what is behind being defensive. And again, this could stem from, growing up in an environment where you were expected to be perfect, or, when things did not go the right way, you were, basically the standards were really high. So you want to come off as if I got this. Now, in relationships, this can really be extremely detrimental. People that like to protect themselves, really, to protect who they are, to protect their reputation, to protect, them as their own individual persons, they like to be defensive. People that like to counterattack. So I'm communicating something to you. I'm maybe asking you to do something, but instead of listening to what I'm requesting of you, you counterattack me. And before you know it, I'm counterattacking you, and before we know it, it's a yelling match. Another way that defensiveness could come off is playing innocent victim. You know how sometimes, for example, you have a partner who comes from work and they're really tired, and maybe every time they come from work, they help you with housework, but this time they're really tired and they just wanna, go rest. And so they'll be like, you know what, I don't feel like I have the energy to sweep the floor, I'll just go rest. So instead of hearing, that they are really tired, you start to play innocent victim and be like, oh, I've been here the whole day with the babies, and you don't care, and you're basically playing innocent victim. Yet what he was trying to communicate is that I am tired and I can't do this. It can always wait. Now, what is the remedy of being defensive, or the antidote? It's to take responsibility of at least part of the issue. When you are dealing with something, when you are, having some sort of conflict, try to, understand, try to seek to understand, and also try to take responsibility, try to be responsible and be accountable, basically. The scripture to this is Genesis 9. Okay. So Genesis 9:12. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. Yes, I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and..." No, never mind. I think I have the wrong scripture. So we'll go to Proverbs 25. So Proverbs 25, verse 25, verse 12. It reads, like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. So instead of, coming off as defensive, try to really listen to what your partner or your son or your daughter, your loved one is trying to communicate to you. The last horseman is So the last horseman is stonewalling. So basically, what is stonewalling? So stonewalling is having somebody emotionally detach themselves from the situation. So you're talking to somebody, but they have emotionally disconnected. Now, research has shown that 85% of stonewallers are men. Now, this does not mean that women cannot stonewall, but majority of, at least according to Gottman's research, stonewallers are men. Now, the reason why actually individuals or people stonewall is because they feel physiologically flooded, or they feel like they're stuck. And so they do not want to continue engaging in that conversation. So instead of either walking out or physical or verbally communicating that I am done and I feel so stressed out, they decide, they start to shut down. They're not looking at you. It's as if you're literally talking to a wall. Now, the antidote to that is to really take care of yourself when you start to predict, or when you start to sense that you're really getting stressed out. Go take a walk. You can even talk to your partner or your loved one and tell them, you know what, I feel like I cannot continue this conversation. Can we revisit it next time? But if you continue stonewalling, this is one way of avoiding the conversation. And we all know that, you can avoid the conflict, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding that conflict. One time, a week after that, a month or a year, these things will start to come up again in a different way. Okay, now that we have explored some of the things that hinder our effective communication, or things that may stand in our way when it comes to effectively communicate, what are some of the skills or some of the tools and strategies that we can really use when we really want to, effectively communicate? Now, before we probably break them down, I want to bring to your attention two types of conflict. Now, every relationship, be it parent-child, be it through between intimate partners, be it friendships, all these relationships between church members, we're going to experience conflict at one point. That is a given. So the problem is not conflict happening per se, but rather the way we cope and the way we manage conflict. That needs to be the focus. So these conflicts can be divided into two categories. One, solvable problems, and perpetual problems. Now, 30% or 31% of the conflict or the problems that we experience are actually solvable problems. So these are situational things. These are things that, problems that, COVID-19 is happening, all of a sudden I'm homeschooling, so we need to improvise. How are we going to do this? So that's a solvable problem. But there is also a perpetual problem. So perpetual problems are problems that tend to reoccur or happen from time to time. So today we are talking about the same issue that we were talking about 3-4 weeks ago. Now, most of these perpetual problems stem from our personalities, they stem from our values, they stem from our unresolved traumas, they stem really from our experiences and what we value in life. And so the reason why I want to highlight, these two types is because in most cases, we tend to address perpetual problems as solvable problems. So you find that we are spinning over a problem that we are not even about to manage or to resolve in a week or two. But if you know that this is a perpetual problem, this is a problem that is really embedded and it stems from my personality or my beliefs and values, then maybe the approach may look different. But again, you find that people keep on revolving or cycling over issues as if they're going to solve them. Now, there is good news and bad news to to knowing this. Or again, perpetual problems are 71% of the problems. So most of our problems are perpetual problems. They are bound to reoccur. So instead of addressing them as solvable problems, you want to understand where does this stem from and come up with a game plan as a couple, as a family, as friends. Now, the good news to this is that you don't have to solve all the challenges in your relationships for you to enjoy your relationship. Sometimes you just have to accept who your partner is, understand them, and just accept them for who they are, just as Christ accepts us for who we are. The bad news is that there is no benefit without a challenge. If we are going to enjoy good, thriving, healthy relationships, we need to put in the work. We need to put in the effort. We literally need to step out of our comfort zones and try something new. And we were talking about love languages, and that's something that is really tough, because if you have a partner who enjoys quality time, and in your world, quality time is foreign, it's going to be extremely hard. But in order for you to take care of your partner's need, you really have to learn how to do this. So there's no benefit without a challenge. If you're going to enjoy a good relationship, you've got to put in the work. So some examples of perpetual problems would be, for example, James wants to have a baby, but Linda is not ready, and she doesn't even know that she'll ever be ready. So if you know that this is a perpetual problem, you're going to come up with a plan of, okay, how do we deal with this, instead of having to fight over this as if it is something that you're going to solve tomorrow. Okay. So now that we've identified those two categories of different problems that we experience, again, the point is not to resolve conflict, but rather to manage it or to cope with it. Now, some of the tips quickly that will really help us to communicate effectively, to share what we think and what we feel, are seeking to understand. Now, if there is a verse or the part of the Bible that really, really nails this down, is in Genesis 3:9-13. When Adam and Eve had sinned, and God came out and was looking out for them. I have to read this because it's so interesting. So Genesis 3, Genesis 3:9-2. So the Lord called to Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" So the Lord called him and asked, "Where are you?" Do you think that God did not know where Adam and Eve were? He definitely knew, but he used open-ended questions to really know where they were. And then he goes ahead and says, so he said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked?" So God is really probing. God is asking these questions. So he's coming from a place of, I want you to tell me. I want to hear. I want to understand your perspective, right? So likewise, in our different relationships, we really need to come from a place of understanding. You want to explore. If your child, if your partner, if your friend is wailing or is crying or seems angry, you want to seek to understand what it is that is causing you to feel the way you're feeling. Okay. So use open-ended questions. Another tool that you can use is to start gently or use a soft startup. So what does this mean? In Proverbs 15:1, it says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." So, even if your point is valid, the way you're putting it across really makes a huge difference. You don't want to start on a harsh note. You want to start on a good note. And starting on a good note could look like, first affirming your partner or your child. For example, you could say, I can really see you're working hard on your homework, but did you remember to? So you're really starting on a good note. When you start gently and on a soft note, chances are that you're going to win this person over. Identify what is bothering you and why. So many times we assume that our partners, our friends, our kids know what we are experiencing, what is bothering us. Even though you've lived with your partner for years, 30 years, 40 years, it is your responsibility to communicate how you feel, because you're not going to expect that person to identify what you've not even identified yourself. Try to clearly communicate your needs. Again, only God can read our minds and our hearts. So you really need to help your partner, your friends, your loved ones to communicate, to know what you need. Talk to your loved one like you would talk to a visitor. You know how we are overly nice to our visitors? For example, if the visitor forgot their umbrella, you're gonna call them and be like, "Oh, hey, Sandra, I hope you got home safely. Did you actually know that you forgot your umbrella here?" But if you're talking to, your kid or whoever you're so used to, you may end up yelling or like really start blaming them or stuff like that. Compromise. I've not heard of a relationship that does not compromise. In Matthew 5:25, it says, "Agree with thine adversary quickly, while thou art in the way with him." So this is a verse that talks about how you can really try to agree with your friend or your family member before you even go to court. Try to compromise, meet in the middle, try to talk about stuff. Okay. Practice self-compassion. Do not be too hard on yourself. Do not beat yourself up. We all make mistakes. Sometimes you can yell when you were not necessarily intending to yell. But if that happens, again, assume responsibility of your actions, apologize, and practice self-compassion. Do not beat yourself up. And finally, try to extend forgiveness. Really extend forgiveness. In Proverbs 17:9, it says that he that covereth a transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth a matter separates friends. So you really want to extend forgiveness, because he who extends forgiveness will also receive forgiveness in return. I enjoyed spending this much time with you and your families. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it insightful. Thank you for now, and bye.